Alright everyone, I briefly mentioned this yesterday in the context of Gavin sparring with the SPLC. Now I've actually got the article open. I usually don't do this because there's a huge laundry list of groups that are involved with this. Nick Sandmann, the smirking kid, smiling kid. It's a terrible thing. 16-year-old kid's not allowed to smirk in a MAGA hat or else he's Hitler. He's suing, he and his legal team, I think he's got like 7 lawyers on this case now for these Covington kids, is suing a laundry basket of individuals for libel, essentially, as part of a massive suit. I'm going to read through some of these, at least the organizations that are involved. There's like a dozen of them alone, and then a whole bunch of pundits and some websites, actually, that were involved in saying demonstrably false things, even when confronted by reality. And keep in mind, a lot of these people were the people that were shrieking about attacks on the press. They're like, they say stupid shit about Sandmann or about the Covington kids that is false. If they reviewed all of the camera angles, they would know that it's false. They were told that it was false and asked to recant, asked to apologize. These, I guess, are the groups that either didn't or did so too late, or were so egregious in what they were saying, like encouraging violence and doxing and stupid shit like that, that they're being sued. I expect that at least some of these particular suits, some of these individuals will end up having to pay Sandmann. And I'm glad that he's doing this. The goal of this should be to prevent it from happening. Never again should we have a situation where a group of kids is getting lambasted by half the country because they've been whipped into a frenzy by a bunch of corporatists. We shouldn't be having... There didn't even need to be a discussion. There was nothing to be outraged about in the first place. Even the initial footage, which was badly out of context, presented as is, wouldn't have offended me. Let's say that these Covington kids had gone up to the indigenous people and just stood there chanting, and this kid was just smirking 2 feet from a dude. He's not assaulting him. He's not threatening him. He's not bringing possibility of bodily harm. He just walked up to some people that were holding a fucking march. It's a right to protest and counter-protest. But I'm going to read through some of these, actually. Now, I have my camera off for a second. Here's a partial list of the groups they're being sued. And actually, there's an aside here. Assisting McMurdy will be the high-powered law firm of Lynn Wood of Atlanta. Represented the family of John Benet Ramsey, actually. A big case from, when I was like, I can't even remember how old I was. I was back in the Clinton era. Clinton done it, probably. The Washington Post, the New York Times, CNN, Cable News Network Incorporated. It's funny they put that in there. It's like, who knows that? It's fucking just CNN, Clinton News Network. The Guardian, National Public Radio, TMZ, Atlantic Media Incorporated, Capitol Hill Publishing Corporation, the Diocese of Covington, the Diocese of Lexington, the Archdiocese of Louisville, the Diocese of Baltimore, Ana Cabrera, Sarasota, the list goes on and on. It's like half the pundits in the legacy media. HBO, Bill Maher, Warner Media, Heavy.com, The Hill, The Atlantic, Bustle, Elin Omar, Elizabeth Warren, Kathy Griffin, Alyssa Milano, Jim Carrey. And it's like, you got to understand, a lot of those people are filthy rich in organizations, so they have a lot of high-powered lawyers too. The odds of him being able to clean up with all of these people relatively limited. The odds of at least some of the more egregious cases of obvious libel that was never it was malicious, never retracted, and in some cases, and here's really where it steps, I think, way over the line, and also coupled with calls to direct action by others. Like when Elin Omar made her tweet, and she's like, oh, terrible kids, no place in American stuff. You are taxpayer funded, you represent the U.S., and you're saying this, you are committing libel. That's a little bit different than if it's some random Twitterer. And when you're a pundit in the legacy media, supposedly journalistic and ethical and all of these things, you should be held to a higher standard. If you want to declare yourself different from the alt media, you're deserving of special treatment. You must have the press pass. You must be able to talk to Trump anytime you want. You're special because you have a master's degree in journalism. Okay, if you're going to be treated special, that comes with special responsibility. Like, not beating up on a bunch of 16-year-old kids and spreading their docs around. They had no right to do that. In some cases, I believe like in Heavy's case and stuff, they were repeating patently false information that a topical fact-checking would have shown to be false. Some of these sites, like one of the biggest claims was that Sandmann and these kids had approached the other group of people and had said racial things to them. That did not happen. The build the wall and make America great again chanting was a small group of kids that were talking to some people that had antagonized them. The black Israelis had shown up, antagonized the indigenous people and the Covington students, and were the primary motivating force behind why they were doing their school chants. Not because they were attempting to mock anyone. But yet these falsities were not only put out in the media, but they were repeated ad nauseum by large groups of people. Then it was associated with a witch hunt style mini moral panic in which people were trying to get their docs and they were trying to harass their parents. Bomb threats were called in their school. I would think for pain and suffering and psychological trauma alone, imagine the trauma. You're just standing there. You're not expecting to be on TV or anything like that. All of a sudden, you wake up the next morning, you're probably in the middle of the night due to incessant phone calls. Every fucking person in your school's like, hey, what the fuck's going on? The diocese throws you under the bus. You're in TMZ. You're on the front page of the New York Slimes and Fox News. Everyone wants to talk to you. Everyone wants you to tell them what's going on. And you're getting called a racist because you were standing there. Think of it. The legacy media is in steep decline in this country. They get a huge amount of money, but their overall audience share is waning over time. They're not doing so well online. Some of the middleman media firms, the mollusk media, like like Heavy.com at this point, they're in decline as well, in steeper decline. They keep having to downsize, like BuzzFeed and HuffPo and all of the others. The New York Times had to lay off half its editorial staff or something like that last year. Despite that, though, they still have a collectively large audience. It's really inefficient to reach them, and it's declining, but it's still massive. And so when they say, well, here's the face of modern neo-Nazi or something, it's like, what the fuck do you expect to happen? And they knew full well what would happen to the Covington kids. They knew full well they were going to get doxxed and harassed and their school picketed and all of these other things. Because it's happened before. They whip people into a frenzy and riots start. The other day was the anniversary of, it was like Trayvon Martin's birthday, and that was trending. And so again, it's a media circus, a bunch of bullshit. They attempted to kangaroo court George Zimmerman, who admittedly has problems of other sorts over time, as we've seen. But, it was justifiable what he did. He defended himself. You say that and people assume that it's bigoted or something. Fuck him. No, Nick Sandmann is suing half the legacy media. Good for him. And the diocese there, because those dioceses were basically spreading misinformation too. They were responsible for, because they were running, here's the thing, they were running the educational facilities a member of that's being targeted, and they're not defending one of their students despite the fact that they had evidence by that time. They had to have seen these other clips that showed that some of the things that were being said were false. They had a responsibility to their student body to defend them, to defuse the situation, and they totally failed. Now, I don't think that the diocese is more likely to settle with them. Say, look, we're really, really sorry. Please don't take us to the cleaners and pay him hush money, essentially. They'll settle out of court. That's my expectation. And really, in some of these cases, I expect that the end goal is to get a settlement, not to actually drag it out for a significant amount of time. When you've got Lynn Wood and these other high-powered groups and individuals on the Covington kids side saying, hey, this is so cut and dry in some of these cases, we're going to clean up. That's a signal to those other groups, hey, you might want to just cut a check. Just take a zero off of what's being asked and hope that they accept your money so that they will leave you alone. But then again, this could have been avoided if they had left the Covington kids alone. Now couldn't it? So it's sweet justice. I mean, it's definitely deserved. Just like when the SPLC probably loses against McInnes because he's not a hate-filled individual. It's going to be funny if that happens. I hope it does. I hope it puts him out of business. They have deep pockets, but they're over time getting a little bit more shallow because people are realizing a lot of people no longer want to listen to them. I wonder why. Could it be because they're totally partisan? That's about all. Peace out.